Mitch, are you here? Yes. I am so glad that Mitch and Marty and George and Jerry are here today, because these are the true experts on anything to do with Apple. I'm somewhat limited, even though I've been using Apple, my God, going back to about 1987 or 88, when my newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, switched over to Apple. Bought all Apple machines, and my gosh, what a godsend that was. Very, very early on. You know, I was just thinking when we were talking about turning off your iPhones, some of the things I find annoying about Naples is no matter what theater you go to, no matter what they put on the screen about turning off iPhones, there's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 people that'll get the noise. Second thing that confuses me about Naples is the extent to which any restaurant operator feels that he has to have loud music playing.
Yes.
At all. I'd like to carry on a conversation with valued people that I'm sitting with and going out and spending a lot of money for a meal, but we have to shout at each other. Last night I was at the yacht club, and that's the way it was. There were 8 people sitting at the table, and we were all shouting at each other because of that. And the other thing that's fascinating to me about Naples is that no matter what kind of a forum you attend or a meeting you go to, everybody seems to get there at least a half an hour before you do. At least there's one culprit here. But it really puzzles me. And the other thing, and maybe I'm being a little bit hard-nosed about this, but at the end of just about every performance that I go to, whether it's at the Phil or at a church where there are musicians or singers, people can't wait to stand up to give a standing ovation to everybody, no matter how bad that performance was. Okay, I got that.
I have the name of a psychologist that you might want to work with. So Mike, tell me, is there anything that bothers you?
Big pardon?
Is there anything that bothers you?
No, those, I can deal with those, but let me tell you a couple of things.
You should have asked.
All right, I'm glad that Peggy Farron is going to be coming here, because that lady sure knows her business. She is a pleasure to listen to and watch, because she's always smiling and laughing. And she knows her stuff. And while she's going to be concentrating on Photoshop and what, you're going to have the whole hour of how to manipulate or improve your photographs. So I'm going to cut back a little bit on that and go into a more preparatory phase, which is to tell you how to get better pictures on your iPhone.
Did you accidentally
You know, one of the fascinating things is that the extent to which society has been revolutionized by the advances of telephone technology. You know, we read and we hear a ton of information about how it's shattered social harmony and politics, but what we seldom hear about are the positive elements that's come into our lives and the impact that this new phone technology has had on society. In my case, for example, Liliana, my wife, and I in recent years have never had such close relations with our own family as we do now. It seems as though grandchildren are constantly sending us messages. That would have never happened before. And while we can complain about the impact that computer games, and especially war games, are having on our kids, there are good sides about all of this, and that's the sort of thing that we never hear about. And I don't think the impact of this new technology, this new iPhone technology, didn't hit me until one day several years ago when I was walking down Chicago's Michigan Avenue, the Magnificent Mile, and I did a double take when I saw a guy in his mid-20s loudly talking to himself and occasionally laughing out loud. And during the later days, I noticed that there were other people on the street that were doing the same thing, and I thought to myself, my God, so young to be victims of hallucinations and psychosis. And I thought, well, there must be what we hear about the younger generation going on drugs awfully early. But then I noticed the earpieces. And then I began to realize and recognize the advantages of the miraculous mobile phone. It really has revolutionized, to a great extent, my life, and I guess all of you will have to admit the same thing. In George Ruman's notice today about the meeting, there was a thumbnail bio of my past professional life, including my years as a foreign correspondent for major American newspapers. And I served years ago as the Chicago Tribune's bureau chief in Moscow and Rome. I covered turmoil in the Middle East, wars and stuff in North Africa and in Central America. And over the years, I've traveled to some 70 countries and interviewed dozens, literally dozens of international presidents, prime ministers, and other governor officials. And after my tenure in Moscow, I became the Chicago Tribune's foreign editor, responsible for gathering all international news and running our foreign bureaus and all of our foreign correspondence. I then spent about 3 years on the editorial board and then moved to the higher echelons of newspaper management. But that was then, and that brings us to today. I do envy American foreign correspondents today that are serving all over the world in very dangerous places when it comes to communications and using their iPhones not only to communicate with their home offices, but also to transmit video footage of wars and riots wherever they may be breaking out. It wasn't the same when I was working overseas because of this lack of this incredible technology. Does anybody know here what a telex machine is or was? Yeah, a few of you do, but basically it means that what they can do literally today in seconds to communicate events from abroad, sometimes it would take us an hour or a day to do so. The other thing that we all had to do at that time was in several areas, such as in Eastern Europe, in the Soviet Union, and in a lot of other places, we had to have every single line in our copy that we had written looked at by a guardian of the government. Somebody who would read it over and tell us what was okay to transmit and what was not. And the reason why we had to do what they said was because they controlled communications. I could not send out a telex unless it was approved by the government watchdog who was looking at my material. Today, my God, they just dial a number and off they go. Like most people here, my roots are elsewhere. I was born in Montreal. I grew up on a farm about 40 miles from Quebec City. I moved to Chicago when I was about 12 years old and entered the United States Army after high school. After high school, I majored in political science at Northwestern University, and from there, I hit the main streets of Chicago as a newspaper, police, and fire reporter, and then moved upwards and onwards from there. But through all of those years, I have carried around a camera. And I think my use of the camera began when I was about 12 years old, when I set up a darkroom in my Chicago home. But I really credit the U.S. Army. Any veterans here? Oh gosh, that's so pleasant to see. Quite a lot of you. And then you also know what a service club is. Well, the service clubs were when you were off duty, you could go over and either find an array of entertainment there, somewhere on the military base, and you could also find the dark room. And these service clubs were equipped with photo labs and that's what I used. And there they taught me the techniques of developing and perfecting photographs. At that time, I bought my first serious camera, which was his Icon Coniflex. It must have set me back about 3 months' pay, but I actually did it. And after Northwestern, I became director of the, at Northwestern, I became director of the Students' Company photo department and developed my own photography business. By that time, I'd moved up to more elaborate equipment, but all of this background is to show you that I have a background in photography, and I do really strongly appreciate what this little apparatus can do. I don't know if you can see this bag here, but whenever I would go out on a photo assignment, this is what I had to carry around, usually on my back. Today, this is all I have in my pocket, and I probably take about 80 to 85% of photographs that I do today, both here in Naples or wherever I am in the world. I use this iPhone. This little lens here, tiny little dot, replaces a lens which could have been anywhere from this long and this bit around to this long and this bit around. It's an incredible thing. So to me, the iPhone is really a miracle. It allows conveniences belong what I ever thought I could believe some years back. And I really love this iPhone X, or the iPhone 10, as much as I really appreciated the iPhone going back to, I think my first phone was either the 3 or the 4. The average person may not notice the difference in photographs between this and what you're able to get on your 7 or your iPhone 8. How many of you actually have iPhone 10s? That's a growing number. How many are still using the 7 and the 8? Okay, so the majority of us in here, I think I can say, are either using the 7 or the 8 or the 10. I don't think, unless you were a serious photographer, anybody would be able to tell the difference between the iPhone 10 and what you could do on the 7 or the 8, or for that matter, even the 6, which I used for about 3 years before I got this 10, and I was quite pleased with the photographs that I got. I do notice the difference on the 10 because I'm more discerning due to my advanced knowledge of photography. So any of you who have the 7 or the 8, you can feel good about it, because I don't think the 10 would give you all that much that you could really notice. You would if you had something like the 4 or the 5, yes?
What's the difference between the 8 and the 10? I kind of thought they were the same. From
The difference between the 8 and 10?
Yeah.
I can take pictures in darker light that I can. Now, not everybody takes pictures in dark light, but I can notice if I'm, say, standing on my balcony over at Bayfront Place and photographing down on the street after dark with just street lights available, I get a much greater clarity. The other, now I'm not sure about the 8 or the 7, but you have the dual lens, the other telephoto, the magnifies
7
and
plus
binoculars.
The pluses do.
Huh?
The pluses do.
Yeah. And I can notice the difference in the colors that I get, and I can notice the difference in the overall clarity. Yeah, Mitch.
Yeah, on the 10, the second lens, the telephoto lens, has image stabilization, does it on the 8
Right.
Plus. And I think it also, as you indicated, lets in a little bit more light. And I think, I thought I read where when you're up to a 2 magnification, that image stabilization helps quite a bit. And that's a plus for that camera over the 8 Plus.
Yeah, that's definite, because one of the things that I think everybody should be concerned about is camera shake. You may wonder why your photos don't look as clear as they should. and it's because of camera shake. So what I'm going to do is try to get into some of the mistakes that we could all avoid when we're taking pictures with this device. The most annoying thing, again, repeating myself, is the elimination of camera shake. And while the 6 and the 8 have good stabilization, the 10 actually has better stabilization. Now, I would notice that the average person who uses the 10 that really isn't into photography all that much wouldn't necessarily notice it. But here's what I do when I'm taking a picture that I really want to look as clear as possible. When I'm using this, I want to stabilize it as best as I can. And normally what I do is I look for anything from a post, a lamp post, to an item of furniture or anything else, and I just set this on it. That is, if I don't have what a lot of you were probably noticing, many people have, and that's a special tripod that fits perfectly onto your iPhones. But in that I do not carry an iPhone along with this, I do look for anything to stabilize it on. And in the absence of anything to stabilize, what I do is I never take a picture unless I have both hands doing it. Now, it might be a little difficult to take a photograph and then press the little photo button here. But if you hold it up with both hands the way I'm doing it here, you could either use the button to take the picture that you've all been doing for years, or you can use any one of these side settings here, and that'll snap the picture as well. So I can do it either by pressing the button at the bottom of the screen, or pressing the top side button, or either of the two volume buttons on the bottom. Another thing that I discovered some weeks ago, that if you have an Apple earpiece, or rather the EarPods, or any kind of an earphone that has a volume control on it, you can actually use that volume control to click the cameras. And the other way is you can actually use your Apple Watch, but I haven't found a really good idea. That sound you hear is Mickey Mouse, and whenever I tap Mickey Mouse, he gives me the time. My wife has Minnie Mouse on hers, and she sounds a heck of a lot sweeter. The other thing, and I don't know whether I'll be able to set this up, but we'll try it, George. We've been working on this before the meeting began. I want to show you what you can do here. Okay. Now, first of all, I have to go to, according to George,
Control center.
yeah, to the control center. While I'm looking for the control center, if you go for an iPhone 10, I've really got to give you an important warning is, do not move that iPhone 10 until you buy a case for it. I had an iPhone 10 for about a day and a half until I shattered the screen. And it only fell about this far from my knee onto a floor. And it was between covers. I bought the cover immediately, but the cover was too cumbersome, so I wanted to get another one. I removed the cover, took it back to the store, and in that 1.5 hour interval, I dropped the iPhone and I completely shattered the back screen. So I went to this Waterside Shop's Apple store, and since I did have, the second thing that I caution you about is always get the insurance program that goes along with it. It's $150 more, but believe me, you could recover that at some point. So I went to the Apple store, and because I had the insurance, the Apple Care program, or I purchased it when I bought the iPhone, I was able to replace the iPhone for $99 at the time that I went to the store. So it took me absolutely no time, and Mitch Mitch happened to be there with a huge iMac that he was getting repaired. I got cleared and I beat him out of the store before he was able to get his job done. So anyway, let me just see if I can, okay, now I hit screen, and I've got George here, and here
There you
it
go.
is. Yeah, okay. Now let's see if I can get it to operate. Yeah.
Can we lower the lights to see it better?
Okay, the other thing is, let me get, turning on the camera. In a 1 second flat, you can miss a photo opportunity that you see. So if it takes you 10 seconds to find your iPhone, or rather your camera on the iPhone, you've missed your shot already. But what you could easily do before you sign in, let me sign out here. I love the face recognition on this. Tap the screen. Okay, it's locked now. If I want to get to the camera quickly, all I do is I swipe to the left, and I've got the camera. And I think you can do that on the iPhone 7 and 8 as well, but I know you can do it on the 10 pretty easily. Now, let's see if we can, have we got this on the screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, if I wanted to focus on the group, what I would have to do is focus about 1/3 of the way down, and then I might get the first row and the last row in fairly sharp focus, much better focus than if I only focused on the front row or the back row. So here, what you have to do is you tap on the screen, and right now I've tapped on the 1 to the 3rd row. Now, if I want to adjust that for light, see if you can see this. I don't know if it'll show up that much on the screen. But there's a little star here, which if you move it up or down, it'll darken or lighten the picture. Now, it's a little dark right now, so I want to lighten it a bit. I just move the star up, and you can see it's over bright right now. But if I move it down a little bit, and I want to focus, I focused on the 3rd row again, and now the problem is stabilization. My left hand shakes a little bit, so it doesn't work so well. So the other stabilization trick is to do what a lot of people do that fire revolvers, and that is just rest it on your arm right here. And then, if I wanted to light it to make it stay on the point that I was focused on, I would just hold it down, and you notice up at the top, it says AE/AF lock. That means that I am locked on the 3rd row right here. And those are very important things if you want to keep the exposure properly set and also the focus properly set. So it's that AE/AF lock. I don't know why this is not turning over, George. I guess we're just left with the vertical. That's okay. So over and under exposure and focus, you tap the part of the screen that you want to bring into your sharpest focus. And if you want to lock that area into place, just hold the screen down, and then you'll get that AE and AF auto focus and auto exposure that'll light up on the screen. The other thing is that you really have to be aware of. I've seen so many people when they're out taking pictures either in the Everglades or somewhere in Naples, is they just pick the camera up and then they just, I see them do this, bring the camera up and they just put their subject somewhere here and then they shoot. Take some extra seconds to just create create a focus, and also the composition. Make sure that you look at the entire screen and know that it's the best possible picture that you could take in that kind of a setting. The other thing which you can be aware of, let me see if I can get this going right now. You know, here I was showing you how to easily access the camera, and then suddenly, okay. The other thing people rely on too much is the digital zoom. Can you
We
see
don't have
it?
your picture up there.
Oh, all right. Let's forget about that. But the digital zoom, and that is, if you want to bring your subject in closer, then you just widen the screen a bit. You've all done that, I'm sure. That's great, but the trouble is when you use the digital zoom, you lose sharpness. The more you zoom, the less sharp the picture becomes, and the more speckled it becomes. The solution to that is just move in closer. Like, if I'm taking a picture and I wanted to take a picture of somebody in the first row here, I would just take the picture here, but if I wanted to get the two people in the first row and then I thought, oh, well, I'll deal with it later, is don't use digital zoom. Just walk around the table here and move in and take the picture. But make sure that they know you're taking the picture and they approve. If you can notice this, when the more you use the digital zoom, the less clear it becomes, and you see all these little, you may not be able to see them, but there's a lot of little dots, little specks and whatnot, and that always accomplishes zoom. The other important thing in a photograph is clutter. Try to set up the angle of the picture you're taking so it reduces the amount of distracting clutter that may be in the photograph, whether it's a building, whether it's other people or what. Try to find whatever angle that you can take it from that eliminates some of that clutter. And a lot of us feel, as I do quite often, is that, oh, well, I'll just take the picture and then I can deal with it later by editing the photo using the various brighteners or darken it or improve the colors. If you force the colors or other aspects of digital editing, it's going to detract from the picture and make your photograph somewhat useless. And let me give you some examples here of what I've been talking about. Okay, the first thing you're going to see on the screen are some of the panoramas. I don't know why I lost the color on there, but that should show you where it's green, it should be a very dark sunset. And I don't want to turn this around because of the wires, it will just confuse everything. George, it's funny, I didn't have that before.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Find another panorama. Okay, when you're taking, the beautiful thing about these iPhones, and you have it on whatever iPhone you have, is the ability to take a panorama photograph. And the only way to do that effectively is when you're taking a panorama is to put it on pano, which you can't see on this, or maybe you can, yeah, let me see. Okay, on the bottom you see portrait. How many of you have used the panel? About a little more than half of you have. But the real value of the panel is I could take it about 180 degrees or even more. But the trick to do it is you hold it very steady, and then you turn your body around to the left to the point, the first point of the scene that you want to record, and then press the panel, and then just twist your body around that way. That gives you the best possible method of getting a panel shot. The other thing, the colors are just faded for some reason on this, I'm not sure why, but the colors on my screen here and what you would get on yours, and if you were to make a photograph of it, it would also, the colors would be beautiful in your photograph, is when you're taking a Panavision now, there's a lot of clutter in there, and the clutter is at the bottom because I'm on a high ridge. The scene there is in Cassino, Italy. What you see in that valley and those two hills over to the right was where some of the fiercest action went on in World War II, in the Monte Cassino and Cassino area, where the 5th U.S. Army was tied up for about 5 months by Nazi forces that were in the ridges beyond and could control with their artillery every single square foot of that valley. So the gentleman on the left there was the one who put up the cross as a memorial to the U.S. forces that were killed taking the ridge that he's standing up right now. But what I did here is a mistake as far as taking a good photograph with the objects in the right place. Ideally, they should be over the left, looking into the photograph. But as it was, I did a quick snap, and I didn't really, what I might have been able to do. I have to explain this to you. When we worked for newspapers, we could not manipulate a photo. We had to take the picture and leave in it everything that was exactly the way that we photographed it. We couldn't remove any wires. We couldn't remove any other distractions. We had to let it all hang out. That was gospel. I don't think you find the same today, but at least then, that's the way it was. But in this informal sense, and since I wasn't doing it for a publication, I would have said, hey, you guys move over there on the left so you can look into the photograph. So remember, you always try to keep the people that you're photographing set up on the screen so as to give the best possible results. Bayfront, you all know Bayfront. Photographs are all green, you don't see the reds. But I wanted to bring in the buildings, but also show the location. And the only way that I could do that was the panel. This is a rather unusual location also in Italy. I could, if I were to use a normal lens, I would not have been able to bring in much more than a little bit on each side of the entranceway. I would not have been able to bring the entire photograph in one sweep. And before the panel before the panel possibility on your iPhone, it would have taken an incredible procedure to digitally on Photoshop. You had to take a number of different pictures and then bring them all together, and that was a real pain. Here again, keep your subjects not in the center of the picture, but on the left, so you can bring in the sweep. That was easily done because I went and positioned myself where I could get not only the couple here, but also the vision in Calgary, Canada, behind them. And here I violated my own principle because I suppose I was more interested in photographing my wife than I was to see behind her.
Wow.
So I put her in the middle of the picture, and I took a picture. And this is Lake Louise, also in British Columbia, Canada. Here's another thing you could do with panorama. No way could I have brought in those flowers, the sweep of the lake behind, and also, again, I put my wife all the way to the right of the photograph, so that she's more or less looking into it, and your eye is directed from her all the way around. It gives you a perspective that you otherwise would not have been able to bring unless you use pano. Yes, at the back of the room.
On the pano, I always found you had to go slow, but you went pretty fast. You can go,
I'm sorry?
do you have to go real slow when you're doing the pano versus when you gave a demonstration?
Pretty much what I just showed you. You just go fairly fast. If you go slow, you're going to get a wavy effect in your photograph. If you do it fairly quickly, like this. Now, a lot of people I've noticed will actually just keep their camera here and twist it this way, but I find I get better stabilization if I hold the camera out this way and just swing my body around from left to right. Now this is sort of a frill shot. This is Castello. How many of you have been to Rome? Quite a few. This is the Castel San Angelo here, and this is the Holy Angel Bridge that leads up to it. Again, the subject is coming down the stairs, and I wanted to do a sweep that I could never have gotten any other way. Here's another example of it.
So you use pano most of the time?
Oh, I use it a lot. And this is in Madeira, one of the islands, Portuguese islands. Yes, doctor.
How much movement can you have in your subject when you're doing a panel? She's
Yes.
walking down the
Yes,
stairs.
that's a problem. Because if you have people that are moving back and forth, if you or have traffic when you're also getting it. So the pano factor is limited when it comes to taking a picture of moving objects. And if you've noticed in all the photographs you've seen so far, everybody is standing quite still, such as even right here. The ship that we arrived there on is right over here, and this may not be much interest to an average person who has no familiarity either with the place or the individuals in it, but it means a lot to the members of your family that you would be sending your photograph for. And remember, every single member of your family that you take a picture for is as important as if it appeared in one of the major U.S. magazines. Did I see another hand here somewhere? Yes.
Excuse me. What I have found with pano is, and a specific item that I did it in was in Omaha. When you're coming across the river out of Iowa into Omaha, Union Pacific has locomotives up on the bluff there. And when I was up there taking those, using that panel, it was like a concave mirror when it came out. I could not, and I did it both ways. I turned the camera and I turned my body. My question is, am I too close to the subject? Because part of it would be distort. It's not distorted. It's plain and simple,
Yeah.
but it's like it's magnified, and then
Right.
it's like a dish.
Yeah, it's good you brought it up now because I was going to get into that
Oh, okay.
actually, but that's fine. That's one of the drawbacks of pano. If you have a subject that up close and you go swinging around, it's going to focus on that individual and then blur whatever else you have in the picture. You're not going to get a clear picture.
Well, it didn't blur it. It did not. This is a locomotive, and it.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
50 feet low.
Yes. So
What was the other
everybody
thing?
has to be on a fairly flat plane.
Okay.
It'll create crazy spot
Right.
section that doesn't belong there. Yeah, at the back of the room.
Can you only take the pano in portrait mode as well?
It's a big difference. You're still going to be limited in landscape mode. For example, in landscape mode, I don't think you'd be able to bring much more than the second white building towards the center, and then over to a little bit to the right of the person in white on the right end of the screen.
So it's better
The panel
to-
takes in 180 degrees. I think that in landscape, you're not going to get more than maybe, oh gosh, I don't know. maybe- Yeah, I'm not.
Okay, so better in the portrait.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Really, I advise you to become familiar with the panel option.
Well, when I take it in landscape, I do a vertical panel, not a
Oh,
horizontal
yeah,
panel.
you have to do vertical. That's the only way you can do
Well,
panel.
you can do up and down.
Yeah, just like this. It doesn't do panel here unless you want to photograph the
Yeah.
tall building.
Yeah, up
Yeah.
and down.
Okay, and got a couple more panels here. This is taken out of shipboard. If I had a better use of, I'll show you how you could have put a star burst here using one of the apps that you can pick up, I think, for free. But these photographs that I'm showing you now were all made much, much, much better by photo editing on the various apps, and particularly the app that you already have built in to the iOS system that you got loaded in your camera. But in this one, I had to, it would have gone very, very bright. Everything, all of this would have been wiped out dark, because this is the actual sun right here. So I had to expose more or less for the sun, and then in the editing process, lighten up all of the shipboard scene right here.
Mike?
That's something that would take a considerable time to show you how
Mike?
to do it.
Well, what about using the HDR function in the camera?
Oh, you could use HDR function too, but again, HDR is in a more advanced stage of photography that I think most people would be familiar with or even want to get involved with. But HDR means high definition range. It means that you do have that option in your software already in the iPhones, the OS software updates that you've been putting on religiously, I hope. If you do the HDR mode, when you're taking the picture and the letters HDR will show up in yellow at the top of your screen, that means that it will take 3 pictures, one normal setting, one lighter, and one darker, and then the internal processing in the iPhones will bring them all together to give you a much better picture. There are limitations to that, and that's why I seldom use HDR, but rather I just rely on manipulating the controls of the photograph when I'm taking the photograph. But here again, on an average, very, very few of you would ever have to deal with light conditions that are as extreme as this one was. Here is something that only a panel could do, bringing in the entire sweep of St. Peter's Square in Rome, from the columns on the right all the way to the columns on the left. It would have literally taken me an hour or more to have put all of those separate shots together into a Panavision scene if I were to use Photoshop on a regular camera that's limited in how wide your capability are with the lens you're using. Yeah, this again is another sunlight screen that looks, it will look much, much better with the proper colors. And this is something that I took from a shipboard. Sun was rising. Again, this is a panel, but I didn't need to do the full 180-degree sweep. I only did about this much, and you probably could have gotten pretty close to this on landscaping, but you would have missed much of the horizon. And again, all of this was manipulated photography-wise or edited, photo-edited by using the system that comes equipped right with your latest iOS system. That does it for the landscaping. The panoramas rather. The other thing is landscaping. Wherever you go, whatever country you're in, you're going to find some really very, very pleasant scenes. Some of these were taken in the Abruzzi Mountains in Italy. But here again, you have to look for an object in the picture to make it a much more valuable picture. If I go back to the first picture, you see the focal point, or what your eye is drawn to immediately, would be this little house right here. Do you see the cross, George?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This little house right here. So when you open this picture, in general, if you were to see it on a better screen, your eye would be drawn first to the White House, and then from the house it would lead you into the rest of the photograph. So that's by focal points in every photograph is very important. Now here, for example, in Bora Bora, I didn't think I needed a central focal point, but what I did need was composition. And the composition is this. Had I moved closer, what most people would do, so that I only got the water in front of the Bora Bora Mountain in the South Pacific in the background, I don't think it would have been as good a picture. So I moved back and I got the foliage here right in front, and that gave me a framing that's very desirable in pictures. Also, let me see if I have a similar one to that. No, I'll forget about this because the colors are just wiped out completely on the screen here. Here again, this is the little town on a hilltop, right on the hilltop, which provided excellent protection from invaders. Most people would have moved up to get rid of everything in the foreground that they would have considered clutter. They would have moved up so that they only focused on this part, which would have been a good picture too. But what I did was, and I don't think you can see it very well on the screen, but there were hedges of flowers right in front. And I framed it again. Clouds up here, foliage here, and then what your eye is immediately drawn towards is right in the center of the picture. Now, this is another one of these. I did use panorama on this as well. In Cortina d'Ampezzo, in the Italian Alps up north, after taking a cable car up to about 14,000 feet and getting out of the cable car, opened up onto this platform, and on a Sunday morning at about 11 o'clock, there was a priest saying Mass up there. So I was able to, using panorama again, bring in the full sweep of the mountains in the background, all of the people that were attending the Mass, as well as what was going on at the altar. And no matter where you are or what you do, you're going to find scenes like this. You just got to be aware of taking into consideration, when you take a picture, more than just the central subject that you are focused upon, and bring in elements in the background that certainly add artistically to the picture. And here again, a lot of people would have just did a close-up on this little shack right here, this little shack in the valley. But I decided to include the snow drifts on this hill in the foreground, as well as what was in the background, and I think that added to the picture as well. Over the last several years and over about a 4-year period, until I got a little bored with it, I got about 35 or 40 ribbons, blue and yellow ribbons from various photo clubs, particularly DPI SIG, local photo club, which is about the best that you could do. It's a terrific organization, and it meets on a Thursday every month, and they have a lot of activities going around. But the photographers that attend those meetings, and it can be up to 200 or 300 people that will attend the meeting at the Gulf Shore, what university, east of Naples. It's, huh?
Ave Maria?
No.
It's on Laley Cultural Boulevard.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
It's across the
Southwest.
Southwest Florida.
They're a terrific group, so I got some of my ribbons, the first place and second place ribbons from this group, and also I got a number of ribbons from a statewide Florida Camera Club group that even iPhone pictures could compete against some of the expensive stuff. I remember one of the photographers at the Chicago Tribune, a really terrific photographer, who very, very upset was talking to me one day. He said, Jesus Christ, you know, I went out on the street today, and there was a doctor there, a goddamn surgeon. And he had about $20,000 worth of camera equipment. And he was telling me what a great photographer he was. He said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy an array of surgical equipment, and I'm going to tell you that I'm a great surgeon. There was a point to that story. Okay, what is this? This is, oh, again, you saw that, so I don't have to go into it. I always explain. Here is a picture of Maria in the South Pacific. Now, you notice in this photograph, there is no there. What captivates you are the mountains around it. But ideally, what I would have loved to have done was put some kind of a boat right here that draws the eye immediately and then takes people's eye and brings in the panorama. It would have been great if I could have found an old square rigger to have put there, but they don't have very many French, British, and Portuguese naval vessels sailing on the oceans anymore. Again, most people would have taken a picture of the mountains themselves, a great shot. But I noticed poppies growing in front of them, so what I did was too bad. The poppies are a little washed out on the screen, but I put the flowers in front of the mountains.
So where were you focused on that picture?
I was focused pretty much a little distance beyond the poppies, which are pretty much up close, so that I got the poppies in pretty good focus, and also the mountains behind them. It's more yellow on the screen than there is there, but here again, composition. You hit upon this watering hole. That'd be a cloud. The clouds were using it, and then, of course, the mountain sweep in the background. So again, always consider the panorama factor when you're using your iPhone. And this is another one. You have to get up quite early in the morning to get a shot like this because the sun is rising and the clouds are in the background. But again, an average person might have focused only on the village, eliminating the fog-filled valleys below and the hill in the background. You know, when you look at a scene, you're going to be dazzled by, oh my God, that's a beautiful village. You have to take a moment to consider what else is behind that village that might greatly enhance your photograph. I'm going to move on to a couple of other things here since we're getting pretty close to when I don't have to cut this out. Got to lighten up a little bit. And the great thing about the camera, the iPhone camera, is it saved me from taking a lot of notes. If I wanted to go to convenience, let me just give you an example first. Normally I would have written down, I wanted to see which was the best to buy. It probably would have taken me about a minute or two to write down the details, but all I did was pull out my camera and I took a picture. I do that a lot. Also, I came across this virtual private network that I was interested in. It saved me time just to whip out the iPhone that I always had with me and take a picture of it. This is another one. In the doctor's office, how often have you seen people ripping out the pages of magazines or putting the magazines in their purse or shoving it inside their clothing and stealing it from the office? Here with the iPhone, you just take a picture of whatever article you're interested in and you can read it at your leisure. It creates a very, very sharp image. And this is something that doesn't happen very often, but if it does, if you're in an accident, or if somebody said, oh, you hit my bumper. No, I didn't. You didn't hear anything. You said, oh, yeah, you hit my bumper. Get that iPhone out, and there's no excuse because you will always have it with you in your pocket or purse, and take a picture of your bumper, of his bumper, or of anything related to an accident scene. Do a 360-degree around it and take pictures from all angles. Because if you move your cars, there is no way that you're ever going to prove to a cop who comes on the scene to investigate that it was an entirely different setup than when he arrived, when the cars were pulled apart, pulled off the road. So this is where the iPhone can be invaluable. So keep that in mind. Two things about accidents. The second somebody hits you, and if you have a pretty good idea that you're correct, you're not a lawyer, I know, but you have a sense of what's right and wrong about driving on the road. Somebody hits you, the first thing you do is you look around and get the license number. You have to write this down, unfortunately, of anybody who might have been in the position to see the accident. Because the first thing that witnesses are going to do is take off. If they know that nobody is hurt, they're going to take off, and you will have nobody that can come, that the insurance company at least, can contact. They will look up the license number, and I guarantee you, they will contact that individual and ask them what they saw. Normally, people will tell what they saw under those conditions. Sometimes they say, I don't want to get involved, but for the most part, they will come to your aid. And the other thing is, you have photographic evidence of how things exactly were, and that is invaluable to an insurance company, as long as you know that you're in the right. Just one more thing here about, and then we'll go into whatever questions you might have. What do we got, George, until 1:45?
Yeah.
Okay. When you come across something that you think is going to give, oh wait, hold on, yeah. Just take a picture with your iPhone. For Easter, 2 chocolate bunnies. My butt hurts because somebody took a bite out of his butt. Why? Because the ears are already bitten. Here's another thing here. Set up shots in your home. This is a little head of an alligator that I bought in the Everglades. I put a little boat that came out of Portugal in his mouth and with an eagle in the background. So play around with those things in your own home. I thought this is a real cute shot taken at Bayfront. A woman who was remorsefully looking into the water and a little puppy looking over her shoulder. You run into these things every day and you have your photograph. I got a big kick out of this. It shows this cat like this, and you can imagine what So those of you that might not see it, it took Ralph 6 minutes to realize the balloon wasn't going to come back. Oh, I got that. Yeah, okay. Just one more here. Let's see. Mosquito ladder. And this is one. What insurance company would ever sell this guy a policy? Here he is, way the hell up on the ladder, making repairs to a wire bending way over to get the job done. Anyway, there's a hell of a lot more, but we've run out of time, and anybody have a question? Yes?
How do you organize your photos?
I do it the slow way. What I do, and this is very important, back up your photographs at least once a week that you take with your iPhone, and I use image capture, which is, you all have that, it comes with your IS downloads. Image capture, and it'll save every single picture you've taken at the full quality in which it was taken. But what I do is I download the photographs and then I just have separate files and I just switch them over to whatever files and I organize them that way. There are organization programs that you can use, but I just feel my way is more convenient. Yes, Beck?
Yeah, Dick Shapiro. What do you do with any positive glare and you can't see it? You want to take it well with the screen?
Well, say again?
A lot of times if you're in daylight and you're trying to take a photograph or a pan or whatever, a lot of times the glare from behind dims your view of the screen. How do you handle
Yeah,
that?
the glare, that you just have to deal with it. I try to eliminate the glare by moving a few feet one way or the other. And if that doesn't work, I just take a picture and I deal with it by photo manipulating through the programs available, either through downloaded apps specifically for those purposes, or even the pretty good app that comes already with your iOS system. Yes?
Have you your opinions on optical lenses you attach to an iPhone? Have you ever used those?
I did about probably on the iPhone 4 or 5, and I didn't really use it more than just a few times because they did not deliver the quality and the sharpness of image that I really needed in order to do good pictures.
So
They may have improved in the last 3 or 4 years. Has anybody else used those attachments that you can put over your lens more recently? What was your, how do you feel about it?
Not the same as yours. I wasn't thrilled, so I didn't use them in the future, going forward.
They're not very expensive, they're $40 or $50, but believe me, I don't think it was worth $40 or $50. If it had been $200 or $300 and really high quality, yes. Yes, Marilyn.
I just wanted to add to your practical uses. I use my iPhone when I have to get a serial number off the back of something that I can't read, and then I can enlarge it and, like the DVR box or the TV or sometimes one of your Apple things or whatever. And I found that very helpful.
Yeah. So anyway, next time you're somewhere and you see something and you feel compelled to get out your notebook and pen or just grab a piece of scrap paper and write it down, pull out your iPhone instead. Yes?
Do you miss film?
Zoom.
Do you miss film?
Oh, do I miss film? No. Quite not. Because after all those years in the dark room, dipping into those horrible chemicals and waiting forever until the prints dry, forget about it. Digital to me is a godsend. It's paradise. Yes. Did you have
on my phone, but I was going to say, I take picture on the road as I drive service trucks. I always looking for service people.
Yes.
If the truck is clean and neat and everything, whatever they do, I have a picture.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that.
When can you come back?
My question.
When can you come back?
When can you come back and speak? When can you come back and speak again?
When did I come back?
To this club?
As soon as he can.
To this
He's
meeting?
here. First of all, he's a member of the club. And are there those in the room that would like to hear from Mike again?